Hello, thanks for joining the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs for our Wednesday webinar. We appreciate you being with us. I know it's kind of just letting people into the webinar right now. So as people join us, we'll kind of go through some of our little housekeeping items and things like that so we can kind of get on the topic here shortly. But as you can see, today we're going to be talking about some common text message scams that are out there. And we know these scammers have a lot of tricks that they use to try to get us to hand over money. Sometimes they're looking for personal information or financial information, access to those accounts and those types of things. So we'll kind of go over some of those common ones, and specifically ones that the Federal Trade Commission just mentioned in a recent report. They put out some of their top text message scams of 2024. So we'll look at those and kind of the ones that are targeting us the most, and we'll give you some tips and information on all kinds of different types of scams that are out there. When you look at Zoom, you should see the little Q&A box. If you have any questions that come up throughout the presentation, feel free to drop them in there. And you should also have access to a little chat box, and we'll put our slide presentations in there so you can download those files if you're interested. And I usually put a couple of links that you might be interested in. So if you're interested in those, they'll be available on those slides if you download the PDF, and it should look similar to that little example that we have down there below. And as always, we like to give our legal disclaimer that I'm not an attorney. You don't want legal advice from me. The presentation's merely meant to serve as an overview and introduction to the topic that we'll be discussing today. Here's our quick roadmap of what we'll talk about. We'll give you a quick little intro into SCDCA, who we are, and how we might be able to help you. We'll talk briefly about spoofing. I'm not going to get into it a whole lot, but it's worth kind of mentioning since that's the big way that scammers target us through these text messages. And then we'll kind of go over some of the top text scams that are out there. And again, these are ones that the FTC put out kind of their top list of scams that are targeting folks. And then we'll give you the red flags to look out for and our free resources that might be able to help you protect your information and your money. And of course, all of our resources are available at consumer.sc.gov. And the little how do I button that's right there in the middle of the screen, if you click that, that will open up that option there and give you a lot of those resources that we just talked about. And you can also click the little About Us button at the top left there, and that'll give you background information as well about our agency and how we operate and who we are. All right, so we're going to kind of get going into our topic. And as I mentioned, we will kind of start with a brief little summary of spoofing. And of course, you know, these scammers use that tool to be able to trick you into thinking that they're somebody else. So they're pretending to be somebody else when they contact you. And of course, we all kind of think of it as, you know, that caller ID when you pick up the phone and it says it's one person, but it's not, it's somebody else. But, you know, the scammers are kind of doing this with a long list of things now. They're doing it with everything from social media to emails to phone calls, text messages. So just kind of know that, you know, scammers like to pretend to be somebody else, and they're doing that in order a lot of times to get your trust and to get your get you to kind of answer that phone call or that text message in this case, right? So they're pretending to be somebody else, and they want to disguise who they really are, so you think they're somebody else. And sometimes that may even be just as simple as what we call neighbor spoofing, where they're making it look like, you know, a specific area code. I like to give my mom as an example. She gets a message, she lives in a different area code, but whenever she sees something that comes up with 803, she thinks it may be me, so she'll answer the phone. So, you know, that's kind of what they're hoping for, is if, you know, it looks like somebody close by is getting a hold of you, you're kind of more likely to answer it. And if it's somebody in your area code, you may be more likely to answer that message as well. And again, a lot of times they're going to pretend to be a government agency, a charity, business, just somebody that you know already. You know that name, you recognize that name, you probably trust them. And again, they're using all these kind of things for not just phone calls and text messages, but, you know, fake social media profiles, emails, all that different kind of stuff. And they're doing that to trick you, make you think they're somebody else. And they're hoping that you'll trust that person that they're pretending to be, and you'll answer that phone call or respond to that text message. And I thought this was pretty interesting when I started looking at text message scams. Just some information that the Federal Trade Commission put out in one of their things in April. They estimate that open rates for text messages may be as high as 98%. So that seems pretty incredible. So if something comes up on your phone, you hear that ding, you're checking it, you're looking at it 98% of the time. That's wild. And they think that, response rates are somewhere in the 45% range. And that's dramatically higher than, of course, what we would do with the email. Email open rates, they think those are somewhere around 20%, and only 6% of the emails are being responded to. So that's kind of why scammers are going to text messages now. They know there's a greatly higher chance that you're going to, one, see that message, and two, it's almost 50-50. There's a 50% chance almost that you're going to respond to that message in some way, either, responding to them, clicking that link, or doing, whatever that action is that they're looking for. So just kind of keep that in mind, maybe be a little more conscious about the text messages that you're opening, that you're responding to. And of course, this little last point here, they've estimated about half of us are texting daily. So again, it's kind of that most common form of communication. And I always tell people, scammers like to communicate the ways that we do. So anytime we're out and about, communicating on a way, scammers are doing that as well. And I'm going to try to launch a little poll here. And I'm hoping you guys see this. It looks like you do. But got a little poll here on kind of the types of text messages maybe you receive. So if you've gotten some of these recently, if you can pop in on the screen there, whichever type of text message you're getting. I know some of these I've gotten very frequently in the last 2 weeks. And of course, these will be some of the ones that we're talking about here momentarily. I'm going to give it a few more seconds. So we have our unpaid tolls, we have our job listings, fake fraud alerts, delivery problems. And I'm taking a look, and our stuff is pretty much pretty even here. I'm going to go ahead and end this in about 10 seconds. I'll count to myself here. I won't make you listen to me counting to 10, but I'm going to go ahead and hit end, and let's share the results. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. So we had 50% unpaid tolls, and that's a pretty common one that I'm getting. The job listings, text messages, I've gotten a great deal of those lately. 17% of you said that. And then 17% said package delivery problems, and then 17% said wrong number. So I appreciate you guys taking part in that. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and click. This is kind of how the Federal Trade Commission broke it down for, this is 2024 statistics that they used. But with all the complaints that they received about text message scams, 17% of them claimed it was a delivery problem. 15% were job scam related. 11% were that security or fraud alert message that you might get. And that one I'll kind of explain a little bit more as we get going on that. And then we had 5% of the unpaid toll. I was kind of surprised that number was that low, but I guess that really kind of kicked off at the start of 2025 when I started receiving those myself. And then, of course, we have our wrong number messages, 4%. And then that other section, that's a gigantic section there, but that's a huge variety of things. So all of those are all pretty small numbers. So they would all be below 4% with all that added into the other there. And so we'll kind of get going into our topics. And I thought we'd start with unpaid tolls, since that seems to be the one that we're all getting the most of right now. And the first example I have here is that first one that I started to receive, but then just a week or two ago, a lot of folks in our state started getting the one that I have there on the right side of the screen. And that one's a little alarming to me, because not only are they pretending that there's a fake toll, but they're also pretending that they're the DMV, the South Carolina DMV. And, I laugh at this one because that message is so long, that one on the right, that I couldn't even fit the entire example onto the screen. It had a gigantic section above it, and then another section below, I think, of what's on there. So it was kind of incredibly long. But there's a couple of different things that are kind of warning signs on that. The first to me is kind of these threats, right? So they're saying you've got to do this now within 12 hours, or you're going to have severe penalties, irreversible consequences. And that's kind of language I've never heard the South Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles use before. And then if you kind of look at that link that I have blurred there on the right side there under Pay Now, I don't like to include some of those fake links, because sometimes, especially the way PDFs work, those links might open up and send people actually to that site. but it had a variation where it was pretending to be the DMV's website, but it wasn't their normal scdmvonline.com site. So that was kind of that warning sign to me. It had a variety of that where it was scdmv and then a whole bunch of other stuff after it. So it wasn't that usual site. And then I always laugh whenever I get these messages too that have this gigantic thing there at the bottom. It says, if the link fails, reply with Y. Exit the message, reopen it to activate the link. You know, that's just a crazy thing that I've never seen a legitimate company do. And I think they're trying to get you to kind of circumvent some of those things your phone or your, you know, your browsers are doing to protect you from those harmful links. So that's probably a way for them to try to get around that, maybe get you some different things where your phone asks you, are you sure, and things like that. So really, if you're getting those unusual messages like that, just keep that in mind. You know, that's just not a thing that normal companies or normal government agencies just don't really send you links that work like that. And of course, with these unpaid toll messages, the big thing to keep in mind is toll roads generally will send you that notice by the mail. I always laugh when I talk to people about this one. I ran a toll kind of unknowingly a few years ago back in another state, and they sent me a thing in the mail and it had a picture of me and my truck with all my stuff in the back of it. I could see it. I knew it was me. I could, you know, see the outline of myself. I could see my tag number, and I saw all the stuff that I knew I was carrying in my truck at that time. So, you know, they're going to send you some kind of notice by the mail. They wouldn't just send you a text message. And of course, the SCDMV, they're not going to send you anything about collecting a toll. They're not involved in that process. It's usually a toll company, or some states, you know, might run it themselves, but some states also kind of hire out companies to do that. So just kind of know that the DMV, especially in South Carolina, doesn't collect those toll roads. So they're not ever going to send you that kind of message. So it's just kind of thinking about what the message is, who they're claiming to be, and how these things normally work. That's kind of one of those good warning signs for things like this. And if you're getting messages like that, of course, you don't want to provide any financial information, your driver's license numbers, any of that kind of stuff. The best advice would be don't to open, you know, any of these links that they're sending you. But if for some reason you think it's possible it could be legitimate, you might want to look up that toll agency, look up their website, their phone number, you know, yourself, do those little internet searches too. But you also might want to just search not the name that they're sending you in those links or those text messages, because sometimes those names aren't quite right. So you want to search to see if that, you know, the name of that toll road is actually what's on that message too. Sometimes that's a telltale sign of that. So do all that research yourself and don't rely on those links that you're getting in those messages. And I kind of laugh at some of these job scam ones too as they come into me. I've gotten quite a few of these recently. This is one example of that, and I got another one I'll show you in a minute. But you know, you can tell they're kind of like these coming to you out of the blue. This recruiters message you. In some cases, they will pretend to be, you know, legitimate online websites that do job searches, things like that, especially ones that maybe you put a resume on them. They might pretend to be those sites. So just kind of keep an eye on that. You know, I laugh at this because they say the daily salary is between $150 and $300. That sounds nice, you know, and you're not going to have to do that much work and all that. They want you to go to WhatsApp in order to provide information before getting it. You know, of course, this is a job that you just need a smartphone or a computer to do, and you can do it anytime you want. Also got one pretending to be TikTok recruitment. I laugh at this because I don't have a TikTok account. So why would TikTok want me to do anything for them? I don't have an account. They don't have my information. So, you know, how would they get my number and, you know, want me to work for them? They don't know anything about me, and they definitely don't want me to be a, you know, running a TikTok account for them, because I haven't done that before. So, you know, that's kind of one of those warning signs with this too. But of course, you know, again, those big salaries, minimum daily salary, $400, minimum monthly income, $15,000 paid by the day. So again, you know, those big salaries, you don't have to do a whole lot of work potentially. 1 hour per day for $400, that's kind of incredible. And again, you know, they're sending you to that WhatsApp account to respond to them more about that. So just kind of know a lot of times scammers will send out those fake work opportunities. Sometimes they're pretending to be legitimate companies or, those legitimate job hiring websites, those types of things. Again, they're trying to be somebody that you maybe know, respect, trust, those types of things. But it's usually kind of that unsolicited offer, right? I never applied for that job at TikTok, so why would TikTok be sending me a message randomly to work for them? And usually these types of things that they're messaging you about are usually something very simple. And then once they get responding to you, they may have some kind of complicated compensation structure. So anytime that comes up, that would be kind of one of those warning signs. Especially one thing we've seen is maybe a claim that you need to make some kind of cryptocurrency payments to unlock additional work opportunities, something like that. So you're kind of buying into a service in order to get job opportunities. So that would be kind of one kind of red flag. And we always tell people cryptocurrency is kind of that common red flag of payment types that scammers like. So anytime somebody's kind of telling you you have to pay with cryptocurrency to unlock a job opportunity, that would be a big warning sign for you. And of course, I just mentioned it a second ago, you want to be cautious of unsolicited job offers, especially if they don't require any kind of reference or an application or an interview. If they're just, going to give you several $100s every day to work for just an hour, that, is a little unusual. And I would think they would want some kind of application and references and probably an interview process before handing you that much kind of money. And of course, you don't want to send money, cryptocurrency, anything like that to an alleged employer. You don't want to pay to have a job, right? They're supposed to be paying you if you're doing work for them. So kind of think about those types of things whenever somebody's asking for money for some kind of job opportunity. And of course, with all these types of things, and we could say this for a lot of scams, take your time. Scammers like to pressure you. They want you to think that you're going to miss out if you don't get involved right now. So just kind of keep that in mind. Always take a step back. Sometimes just talking to somebody else too would be a good piece of advice for these type of things. Our next kind of type of scam would be that fraud alert. Sometimes there's security alerts, but this was kind of one of those quick examples of that. In this case, they're impersonating two companies, pretty big name companies that pretty good chance all of us have heard of: Wells Fargo or Walmart. Probably done business with one or two of those, right? So they're pretending to be those names of companies we know, we probably use, we've heard of them, we might trust them. So they're kind of doing that. In this case, they're asking, if you didn't make this purchase at Walmart, you're supposed to reply yes or no. And of course, if I got a message saying I purchased something for $1,200, I would be a little nervous and a little worked up and probably thinking something terrible is about to happen in my bank account, right? So maybe I'd be inclined to say no, but then they'll probably send you some type of message with maybe a link, or they might even say, talk to our customer support, and then give you a call back, right? So they're trying to get some kind of reply from you, and then they're going to send you something else to do after that. Probably a website that maybe looks like Walmart, or maybe it looks like Wells Fargo, and you're supposed to put in your security information, log in to, figure that out. So we really encourage people, don't reply to these kinds of things. Kind of another example, we're saying security alert with some of these things. So sometimes they might say somebody's gained access to your Wells Fargo account or something like that, for an example. So they may be saying somebody's trying to get into your bank account or your shopping website or whatever the case may be, but just kind of keep in mind that they like to pretend that there's something wrong and you need to do something to fix it, right? So again, our best advice for these types of things, you don't want to call, text those numbers and those messages, and you definitely don't want to click on any links that they might send you. So if you, said, no, I didn't make that purchase, they might send you that link. And again, I always tell people, if you're worried that these types of financial charges may be going through, best advice is maybe go to your banking website or app. I know a lot of my banking is done on their app, right? So you go to that app, use those links and those things that you normally communicate with them with. In the case of that last one, maybe you go to Walmart's website on your own, but you want to use those links that are trusted, are legitimate. You want to be the one putting those in. You don't want to be clicking on those things that the scammer is potentially sending you. And of course, our advice continues with slow down, talk to somebody you trust. So it might be looking up that number on the back of your credit card and calling that number for customer support. That might be something to do. Again, always just kind of talking to a family friend or relative, something like that. They might be able to help you kind of spot some of those signs too. And to put this on there, never withdraw cash in response to an unexpected call or message, because we say that because a lot of times now the scammers will pretend to be a bank and they'll say there's a problem with your account. You need to move your money in order to protect it from these hackers or somebody who's somehow gained access to your account. So you never want to do that. You definitely don't want to. A lot of times they'll instruct you to go to a cryptocurrency ATM, maybe put all your money in that cryptocurrency ATM and give them that, those access codes and those things like that in order to protect it. Just kind of know financial institutions don't work that way. There's really not a legitimate reason for a company or a government agency even to ask you to take your money and put it in cryptocurrency ATMs to protect it. That's just not the way these things work. I always tell people your bank wants to keep your money, so your bank is never going to tell you to take your money and put it somewhere else, especially a cryptocurrency ATM. So just kind of keep that in mind if you ever get any of those types of messages. And you can also warn your financial institution that that's happened. It might be a good idea to let them know that you got that type of message and that, these imposters are pretending to be them. And I know a lot of you said that you got the fake delivery notifications. And again, this was kind of that number one thing from 2024 that the Federal Trade Commission saw nationwide. And it was that message that, maybe it pretends to be the Postal Service, might pretend to be FedEx, UPS, any of these types of things. But they're sending you that message that there's something wrong with the package or, something that's supposed to be delivered to your home. And again, you've got to click some kind of link or make some kind of action to be able to fix this problem. So they're probably going to ask you for some financial information or some other details that they can kind of get other things about your personal life, or they may be trying to get access to some of those financial institutions. Some of these links may even download malware so they can monitor, whatever you're doing online after that. So really just kind of take a step back and ask yourself a few questions. And the biggest one, is that, was I expecting a package? Did I have anything delivered to my house? If not, it's probably a scam. If you didn't also kind of sign up for those notifications that the Postal Service offers, that would be a warning sign too. And also, that thing too, we always say, does it actually look like what the Postal Service or those things should, be? And I'll kind of show you an example of that here in a second. I kind of got ahead of myself on that, but the big thing to keep in mind is the Postal Service does offer free tracking, but you have to sign up for that service. Usually, when you're putting that package in the mail and you're paying for it, they'll give you that tracking code then and there. So that's kind of how you would sign up for that. And again, if you're not kind of putting in that request for those tracking details, don't click the links. And the Postal Service kind of has important information in there. Usually when they send you something, it's just going to have that tracking number. It's not going to have any direct links. So you'll want to put in that tracking number yourself. So when you go to the Postal Service website, you look it up yourself and then you put that tracking number in there. That's usually how those types of things work. And a lot of times that's kind of helpful, just kind of thinking of, how does this work? Is this out of the norm? And I've got a little link in there too from the Postal Inspection Service, just that they kind of go through kind of their practices of how these tracking things work and how you can report some of these different scams to them. And that will help them as well kind of monitor that. Again, they have this little information here that it doesn't contain a link, so you're not supposed to, click those links if they're pretending to be the Postal Service. So you might want to kind of just take a look at that, and that might be something kind of useful for you too, if that's one of those scams that you receive a good bit of. The wrong number text scams, those come around from time to time, and a lot of times it looks very innocent, right? You might get a message saying, "Hi, how are you?" Or it might even just say, "Do you want to meet for coffee?" And of course, these are all things that we message to friends and family. So that's kind of why they're doing that. And they want you to make a simple act and just respond. "I don't know who you are," wrong number, whatever, So once they get you to respond, they're probably going to start following up that message with, some other type of scam. So they're trying to build a fake friendship or a fake relationship, and they're doing that to try to win over your trust. And they might start saying, "Oh, I was trying to get in touch with my grandmother or my neighbor," or whatever the case may be, and then have kind of some other story that follows. Or in some cases, we've had some employees here even get some of these wrong number scam messages, and the scammer then starts, oh, I'm sorry. Didn't know that I messaged the wrong person, but now that I have you responding to me, let's be friends, something like that. And a lot of times they may even get kind of that romantic relationship they're trying to get going, those kind of undertones of that. And of course, all of these things can kind of lead to different variety of types of scams. So kind of any scam you can imagine can, come from that. A lot of times it may be, some kind of romance scam, some type of investment scam where they might start talking to you and then kind of slowly reveal information about some kind of great investment opportunity that they're taking advantage of, and they want to get you in on it. It's just kind of unusual that somebody you don't know and messaging you, out of the blue would be talking about that. So really just kind of ignore these types of messages. Really the best advice, you can always delete them, block those people who come in, but just kind of realize too, if you're responding to them, that's going to let the scammers know that it's an active number. And then it could lead to additional messages, or they, some times they put you on a different list and they give it to their other scam buddies who, will then know that you're somebody who's going to respond to a text message. So then you might start getting an additional, messages from other scammers and different scam attempts that way. So just kind of keep that in mind before you respond to some of these wrong number text scams that are out there. And of course, we always tell people that we can't know every type of scam that's out there. And a lot of times these scammers kind of change their tactics, right? But we know there's some kind of common threads to a lot of these different things. So there's red flags that are out there for all types of scams. And again, that big one is they're going to pretend to be somebody somebody you recognize, and they do that to try to gain your trust. So I think if you know that name, you recognize it, you probably trust that company or that government agency or, whoever. They know if you know and trust that name, you're probably more likely to respond to those text messages or those phone calls or whatever the case may be. And again, they're going to say there's a problem or there's a prize. So it's kind of that, like that message we showed where, $1,200 purchase at Walmart that you didn't make. So there's a problem. I got to fix this problem right now, or this, pretty big charge is going to go through my bank account and I don't want to be liable for that charge. So I better respond to this message. So they do that to kind of get us worked up. And then as we get emotional about these type of things, we're maybe not making the best types of decisions. And then they're going to pressure us to act immediately, right? So if we're already worked up thinking something bad's going to happen, and now we're under pressure, kind of like that DMV message, they said you only have 12 hours to respond, or irreversible consequences, whatever that means, right? So, they're trying to pressure you to act immediately, and they know if we're acting fast, we're not, one, talking to other people and kind of having that red flag raised that it's potentially a scam, but we're also probably making bad decisions and we're doing things that we wouldn't normally do. So that's kind of why they do that. And again, they always want us to pay in a specific way. A lot of times it's cryptocurrency, especially cryptocurrency ATMs right now. Gift cards, still a common thing. Sometimes it's those reloadable credit cards, something like that. So just kind of keep in mind that scammers like for us to pay in those kind of unusual, specific ways. And they know that cryptocurrency gift cards and some of those types of things are hard to track down, hard to get that money back too. So once you kind of hand those payments over, they're as good as gone. It's kind of like handing cash over in a lot of cases. So just kind of know anytime somebody's telling you to pay in those specific ways, especially gift cards, cryptocurrency, prepaid debit cards, those type of things, that's kind of red flag that something may be potentially wrong with that scenario. And of course, here's our little quick advice on those spoofing messages you may get. So, if there are text messages, email, maybe social media, this kind of applies to all of those different types of communication, but just kind of look for those generic greetings. I always laugh, the dear customer type thing. If you're really, using that company, they probably have your name, your information. So they should be a little bit more specific to you. Act now or else. So again, those kind of demands that you have to do something immediately. So they're probably going to ask you to confirm, verify, or update personal information, login information, something like that. So just kind of beware anytime somebody's telling you to do those things right now, or something bad is going to happen. In some cases, they may already have some specific information about you. They may have found that information online or on social media somehow. Sometimes your information may be part of a data breach somewhere. So sometimes scammers do have that information about you. They may have, account information where they know certain people customers of a certain bank. So then they'll start messaging all those customers, pretending to be that bank. So just kind of keep in mind that sometimes they have very specific information about you, and they're using that to make themselves believable. And then, of course, our advice, we've mentioned a lot of these, or probably all of these already, but I like to kind of mention it again. You don't want to reply to those messages that are asking for personal financial information. You don't want to open attachments or click any of those links that you get in these types of text messages. And of course, you don't want to call or reply to them, right? So if you're replying, they know that you're somebody who's real, somebody who's going to respond to messages, and you might get additional ones. So our best advice is don't call or text those messages, and you don't want to call any of them numbers that are in there anyways, because that's going to go to a scammer potentially, and they'll have you on the hook, and they can be very convincing and get you to kind of make those bad decisions once they get you to answer the phone like that. And of course, our number one rule is always don't give away your personal or financial information to somebody whose identity you cannot verify. So if you can't, determine that they really are who they're claiming to be, don't give them any of that information. You can always hang up and call those customer support numbers, especially for your banks and things like that yourself. Look up those numbers on the back of your debit or credit card and use those numbers the same ways that you normally would interact with that business. So you want to use those tried and true ways to get in touch with those companies. And of course, you can always use those little functions on your phone that, if you've opened up a message and you realize it's one of these scam messages like this one here that claims to be UPS post, you can use that little report junk button there that pops up on your phone. That was one that looks like how my phone looks. And then you can click, of course, that delete and report junk. And that's going to help those phone providers kind of know who those trouble messages are coming from, who's sending them, and hopefully they can take steps to block more of those calls and those messages from going through. And, the simple thing that you can do, just hit that delete and report junk button, and it takes a few seconds, and hopefully that'll help the phone providers be able to kind of prevent some of these messages from getting through to all of us. And real quick, here's our roadmap to avoid any of these types of scams that you may be getting. And of course, we keep saying it, but it's kind of good reinforcement. You don't want to answer these calls or respond to text messages from numbers you don't know. Block them as they come in. And you don't want to give personal or financial information to requests that you didn't expect. Of course, legitimate businesses aren't going to normally ask you to provide all that stuff. If you're really their customer, they have all that information. They should be able to tell you about it. And of course, you don't want to fall for those high pressure tactics. If they're telling you you've got to make a decision right away, pay them, give over that information right then and there, it's a good sign that it's likely a scammer. And of course, know those payments of that scammers like. We've mentioned it, gift cards, cryptocurrency, wire transfers. If they're demanding payments in very specific ways like that, pretty good chance that it's a scam. And our last kind of quick piece of advice is stop and talk to somebody you trust. I always say, just having that conversation, sometimes even just saying it out loud to yourself and to somebody else, you can kind of realize something's not quite right and it's not the way things normally work with it. So, just kind of saying those things to other people, you can kind of figure out a lot of these signs that something may be off with it. So, before you do anything, talk to somebody else, see what they think about it. And then hopefully between the two of you, you can make a pretty good decision. And of course, we always have free tools for you. And I've got a few things that we don't normally have in this message. So if you're getting a lot of phone calls or text messages, some good things to keep in mind that might help you kind of cut down on some of those messages. One of the best things you can do is kind of look at your phone, see kind of what built-in features it has. Some things will set up, maybe do not disturb, where messages go directly to voicemail, or, those text messages don't go through. Or you can set them up to see kind of, maybe it's only people who are in your contacts list get through when they send messages, and the other ones you have to kind of go in manually and look up. But kind of take a look at what features your phone has, and your carrier may have some options as well. Sometimes you do have to pay for different types of services if they have things to block calls and texts that come through, but a lot of carriers and phone providers have those things for free. So kind of take a look at what they offer and what might be out there. There are call blocking apps you can consider, but you might want to look at the reviews, look at the fine print, see kind of what they're doing, how they're doing it, and all that type of information. And there are some call blocking things for landlines as well. I know a lot of people I talk to, so their landline goes off the hook all day long with calls that are coming through from, either companies trying to sell them something or scammers, but there are call blocking devices that are out there. Again, you probably have to pay for them, but take a look at what's out there and kind of read those fine prints and know what's going on and what's out there. But then some phone carriers will also offer some services. And I'm going to show you a link here. I think this is pretty helpful. It's some information from the FCC. And if you've downloaded those slides, you would have this, but it's fcc.gov/call-blocking. You should see that up there at the top, but they've got a lot of different tools. And I like this because it does have links to a lot of the different phone carriers that are out there, both landline and mobile. And you can kind of go through that and kind of see what services may be out there with the phone provider that you have. And that might give you some additional resources to kind of cut down on these phone calls, maybe text messages that are getting through. But again, that link's there. And if you download the slides, you'll have access to that. And of course, use multi-factor authentication if you're not already. Setting that up on all your financial accounts. Hopefully your financial accounts are requiring you to do that already, but you can set up two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. Maybe you get a passcode that's sent to you in order to log into those accounts, or maybe it's a face scan. Just kind of see what options they have, find out whatever works best for you, whatever you like to use, whatever you think is the easiest. As long as you're using something that's going to help you out. And the FBI tells us that it makes it twice as hard for somebody to get into your account, even if they have their password to it. So that's one of the best things you can do to really beef up your security on all your accounts. And of course, you want to monitor financial accounts. Generally speaking, you only have a certain amount of time to challenge a lot of those things. If you're finding, fraudulent charges on some of these debit cards or your credit card, just kind of keep that in mind. But you can set up those free alerts. I know my credit card will send me an alert anytime there's a purchase, or maybe I like to have it set up so if something's made online, a purchase online, I get an alert about it. That's pretty helpful. You can set dollar amounts. So if you spend a certain dollar amount, or maybe your account goes below a certain dollar amount, you get message. Just kind of, again, take a look at what your provider offers and make those decisions based on what's useful for you. And we always recommend checking your credit report at least once a year, maybe a couple of times a year. That's pretty helpful. You can check them all at once. There's 3 on annualcreditreport.com. If you go to that, you'll get access to TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So you can look at one at a time. You can look at all 3 at once, or you can spread them out, however kind of works for you. It doesn't take too long to go through those, but you want to take a look at everything, make sure it's accurate, make sure any dollar amounts listed for any accounts are, what you owe. If it's, listed like your car payments, should have, what you pay each month and what you owe on that loan. So you want to take a look at all that stuff, make sure it actually belongs to you, make sure it's all accurate. And again, we recommend annualcreditreport.com because it's authorized by federal law. There's certain rules they have to follow on that site as far as providing information to you and kind of how they can use your information. They're not going to be taking all that data about everything that you've done and trying to sell you all kinds of stuff and putting you all kinds of lists off that right off the bat. So annualcreditreport.com is where we recommend going. And if you find signs of identity theft, you may want to consider a fraud alert. And that's basically going to tell businesses that they need to take additional steps to verify that it really is you applying for that loan, or whatever the case may be with that situation. But you're going to need to contact either Experian, TransUnion, or Equifax, and they will notify the other 2. So it's one call. You can go on their websites as well and do that. But if you put it in with one of the credit bureaus, they're going to notify the other 2 major ones and let that fraud alert go in place. And again, it will kind of let other businesses know that they need to take additional steps to verify your identity. We encourage people to put a security freeze on your credit reports. If you have not done so already, it's free to do. You're free to place it, free to lift it. So basically it stops that line of credit from being used. So if you're not actively out, applying for a home mortgage or, maybe additional credit cards, anything like that, you can put that freeze in place. And it's a great tool. It will stop other people from using your information to open up those accounts. So these financial accounts aren't going to be able to be opened while that freeze is in place. If you're like me, I had to kind of put a lift on mine. I had to lift it a few weeks ago or months ago when I got a new line of a new internet provider for my home. So while I was running that credit check with them before they sent me the devices, I had to lift my security freeze. They did that. Once it was back, got it cleared to get all that service put into my home. I put the freeze back in place. It was simple, easy. You can even set it up where you lift it and it automatically goes in place the next day or whatever day you need it. So if you're looking for loans or anything like that, you can have that kind of time range where it's thawed so you can make those transactions. You do have to place that freeze with each of the credit monitoring services. So Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax, you have to put the freeze in place with all three of them. You can go to their websites and do that. It's a pretty quick process, probably 5 minutes or so. You can go through and do all of that. And then, like I said, it will protect you from somebody else being able to, try to use your information and open up fraudulent accounts in your name. And of course, if you think you're the victim of identity theft or a scam, you can call our office. Again, you can report scams to us even if you didn't fall victim to those scams. That just kind of helps us know what's happening around the state. But you got our phone number there. Consumer.sc.gov is also a great resource. You can file out all those forms on our website. And if you would like additional information, we have a lot of our publications on our website. You can either look at the digital versions of them, or you can download them or request physical copies that we'll mail to you. We do all that for free. So our Ditch the Pitch is our scam prevention guide. We should have that available to download too. If you click into the little chat box, you would be able to download that, but that's available on consumer.sc.gov. That's probably our most popular publication, but we also have our credit report guide and a lot of other publications that we will mail to you for free. So just go to our website and put in that request. And we always encourage you to follow us on social media. I also like to tell you about the SCDCA YouTube channel, SCDCA TV. We put a lot of our webinars on there. So if you've missed one or want to go back, you can kind of go look at that information. We have a lot of good resources on that. Some of them are ones that our attorneys have done throughout the year. So some of those may have a lot of information that's useful for you. And of course, we got a couple more webinars coming up. We do Wednesday webinars every week, 10:30 a.m. generally is when we do most of them. We'll be talking about guard your wallet on the road next week. So we'll be looking at a lot of things, kind of travel related things you might want to do, kind of protect those credit cards, things like that while you're traveling. We've also got some information that might be helpful. The FTC just put a new rule in place this week when it comes to live tickets and kind of short-term rentals, so hotels, Airbnb, things like that, related to their prices. So we'll kind of discuss some of the things related to those as well on that presentation. So that's next week. And we'll also talk about job scams. That's one of those ones we mentioned a little bit today in this, but we'll go in a lot more detail coming up on May 28th. And then on June 4th, one of our attorneys and the Consumer Law Council of the South Carolina Bar Association will join us for that to talk about a lot of different solar related issues and the laws regarding those contracts and just some tips that you might want to keep in mind if you are considering putting solar panels on your home. It's kind of things you might want to do before you sign any of those contracts. And as we get wrapping up, I am going to try to take a look here and see if I see anything in the question and answer section here. And I do want to share with you my contact information as well. There we go. Finally advanced for me. So that's my phone number and my email address. If you get our kind of announcements that we send about our webinars each week, you can also reply to that. I get those directly if you reply to that. So that will come into my message box and I'll be able to help you out with that. So if you have any questions or anything comes up that you need a better answer for or a little bit of guidance on, we're happy to help and get you pointed into some kind of direction with it. So those are my phone numbers and my email address. And again, feel free to respond to those webinar announcement emails too as well, if that's easier for you. But I'm not seeing any questions in here at the moment. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. And again, if you have any issues that come up, scam related or identity theft related, feel free to go to our website, consumer.sc.gov, and we have that How Do I button there. That will help you report those and get those forms to us. So if I don't see anything else, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And I hope you'll join us next week for our Wednesday webinar. Thank you.